Let me tell you a story that begins in the half-lit streets of Manila, where a young Filipino boy named Adrian walked every morning with a tiny speaker hanging from his shoulder and a dream he guarded so carefully that he hardly ever spoke of it. He wasn't the kind of kid anyone looked at twice. No fancy clothes, no spotlight, no one expecting anything extraordinary from him. But inside him lived a voice so powerful, so full of soul, that even he struggled to understand where it came from. The world knew Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll. Adrian only knew him as the man whose songs made him feel less alone. Every night, after the rest of the neighborhood had gone quiet, he would slip into the small corner of his rooftop, close his eyes, and sing Elvis songs into the wind as if the sky itself were listening. His mother used to tell him that the voice he carried was a gift, but after she passed away when he was 10, he stopped believing in gifts. Life became survival. He sold candies on the streets, carried groceries for strangers, and sometimes sang by jeepney terminals just to earn a few extra pesos. Every day was a fight, not against others but against the feeling that he would always remain invisible. But there was one moment, one memory, that kept pushing him forward. His mother once told him, "You don't need a big stage to be great. The voice will take you where you're meant to go." But in the years after losing her, that seemed more like a distant dream than a possibility. That was until one afternoon when he was singing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," quietly to himself while arranging candies on the street. A foreign couple passing through Manila stopped in front of him and listened. When he finished, the woman looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Young man, your voice doesn't belong on the street. It belongs on the world's biggest stage." She encouraged him to audition for a famous talent show abroad, telling him he had something rare. Adrian shrugged it off, embarrassed, but the idea planted itself inside him like a seed waiting for the right season. Weeks later, she returned with a piece of paper, information about auditions being held overseas. And that gave Adrian something he hadn't felt in years, belief. He worked non-stop for months, trying to save enough money just to fly. He slept fewer hours, carried heavier loads, took any job he could. Some days he felt like giving up because the amount seemed impossible. People in the neighborhood would tell him he was foolish to chase something so far away. But every time he considered quitting, he remembered the quiet way his mother listened to his voice when he was little, as if she knew something he didn't yet understand. Then came the day he finally had enough to attempt the journey. He packed nothing but 2 shirts, a small photo of his mother, and an old speaker, the same one he'd used for years. When the airplane lifted off the ground, he pressed his forehead against the window and whispered, "Mama, this is for you." When he walked into the audition center, the hall was enormous, filled with people from all over the world, all hoping for the same thing, a chance. Some wore glamorous outfits, others looked like professionals with vocal coaches helping them warm up. Adrian stood quietly at the edge, wearing the same shirt he had used for work the day before. He didn't care about appearances. He only cared about one thing, the moment he would finally sing. Hours passed before his number was called. When he stepped backstage, he suddenly felt the weight of everything he had gone through, the streets, the struggle, the loneliness, the dream he wished for every night. A staff member clipped a mic to his shirt and asked gently, "Are you ready?" He nodded, but inside, he wasn't sure. His hands shook, his heartbeat raced. He kept whispering to himself that his mother was with him. The giant doors opened, and he stepped into the bright lights of the stage. The crowd was massive, and the judges sat in front, including the one he recognized instantly, Simon Cowell. The man whose reactions millions watched. The man feared by contestants. The man whose approval meant the world. Adrian swallowed nervously. Simon asked him where he was from. Adrian answered softly, "I'm from the Philippines." The audience cheered. Simon leaned in, intrigued. "And what will you be singing today?" Adrian hesitated. He didn't want to sound too simple, too ordinary. But he decided to be honest. "An Elvis Presley classic, sir." Simon raised an eyebrow. "Elvis? That's a big choice. Why that song?" Adrian looked down for a moment before answering, "It reminds me of someone I lost, someone who believed in me when no one else did." The room fell silent. When the music started, Adrian closed his eyes. Everything else disappeared. The judges, the audience, the lights, all melted away. And when he opened his mouth, the first note came out so rich and soulful that Simon's head jerked up instantly. It wasn't just a voice. It was pain, love, longing, heartache, all woven together. The tone was warm yet haunting, smooth yet powerful, and unbelievably close to the emotional depth Elvis carried. The audience leaned forward as if pulled by something magnetic. His voice grew stronger with every line, and he poured every piece of his past into the performance. People in the crowd began to stand. Phones came out, some wiped tears, but Adrian didn't see any of it. He was singing to the memory of his mother, imagining she was standing at the front row, smiling the way she used to. When he reached the high notes, the entire auditorium erupted. The control, the soul, the depth, no one expected a boy like him to possess a voice that could move thousands at once. Simon's eyes widened, unblinking. His jaw literally dropped as he leaned back in disbelief, then leaned forward again as if needing to confirm what he was hearing. He exchanged stunned glances with the other judges. Adrian finished with a soft, trembling note, and the room exploded into applause. People were shouting, cheering, stomping their feet. But Adrian stood still, breathing hard, overwhelmed. Simon didn't even wait for the noise to die down. He raised his hand, signaling for silence, and looked at Adrian with a seriousness that sent chills through the room. "That was unbelievable. I mean it. Your voice, where did that come from?" Adrian couldn't speak. His throat closed with emotion. Simon continued, "There are singers who try to sound like Elvis, and then there are artists like you, people who feel the music so deeply that it becomes part of them. You didn't sing that song. You lived it, and that is something you cannot teach." The audience roared again. Before the other judges could even give their comments, Simon stood up. "Hold on, I don't need to hear anything else. I already know exactly what I want to do." Adrian looked confused. Simon placed both hands on the golden buzzer, paused for a moment, and whispered just loudly enough for the cameras to catch it, "This one's for your mother." And then, he slammed the golden buzzer. A blinding shower of gold confetti exploded from the ceiling. Adrian's hands flew to his face as tears streamed down uncontrollably. The crowd screamed in excitement. The entire theater stood up, cheering as if witnessing history. Simon walked onto the stage, something he almost never did unless a performance truly moved him. He put a hand on Adrian's shoulder. "You deserve this. You earned this. And your mother, I promise you, she's proud of you." Adrian tried to speak, but the sobs kept coming. Simon pulled him into a rare hug, the kind he only gave when someone truly touched him. Cameras captured every second. Adrian crying under the golden rain, Simon standing beside him, the audience still chanting his name. It was more than a performance. It was a life-changing moment. Backstage afterward, he called his aunt in the Philippines. The moment she heard his voice, she burst into tears. "We saw you. Everyone saw you. Your mother would be crying right now, Anik. You made all of us proud." And yet, even with all the praise, Adrian remained humble. He didn't brag. He didn't boast. He thanked every person who congratulated him. He kept repeating the same thing. "I just wanted to sing for her. I just wanted her to hear me again." News about his audition spread worldwide overnight. Millions watched his performance online, commenting that his version of the Elvis classic was one of the most emotional renditions they had ever heard. Some even said Elvis himself would have smiled hearing him. Interviews rolled in, invitations came, but Adrian stayed grounded, always reminding people of where he came from and who he owed his voice to. As he prepared for his next performance on the live shows, people everywhere waited eagerly, wondering what he would sing next. But for Adrian, it was never about outdoing others or proving himself to the world. It was about honoring the woman who believed in him long before anyone else knew his name. The night of his live show performance arrived. The stage was different, much bigger, glowing with lights and filled with tension. Contestants before him had struggled. Some had cracked under pressure. Some had forgotten lyrics. Some received harsh comments. But Adrian didn't focus on any of that. He stood behind the curtain, holding his mother's photo in his hands. He whispered, "Please stay with me again." The stage manager signaled him forward. The doors opened, and once again, he stepped into the spotlight. Simon looked at him with warm, encouraging eyes. The music began, a slow acoustic version of "If I Can Dream." The first note came out even stronger than before. This wasn't just talent anymore. This was transformation. He wasn't the shy street boy from Manila. He was an artist commanding the world's attention. The stage lights pulsed gently as his voice filled the room, rising, falling, trembling with emotion. The judges were stunned into silence. He delivered the final note, long, powerful, breathtaking. The audience erupted again. Simon stood first, clapping with a proud smile. "You did it again," he said. "You didn't just sing that song. You delivered a message. Even viewers at home felt the depth of his voice. Something about the purity in his tone made people cry without understanding why. That was Adrian's gift. He didn't just sing lyrics. He opened hearts. And as the competition went on, he continued to rise, each performance earning standing ovations and emotional responses. People called him the Filipino Elvis. But he didn't want to replace anyone. He simply wanted to share the part of himself that had carried him through all the difficult years. By the finals, millions were rooting for him. Fans from the Philippines stayed awake until dawn to vote. People all over the world commented that they had never felt so emotionally connected to a contestant before. And when he finally stood on stage during the finale night, waiting for results, his heart pounded harder than it ever had in his life. He didn't win first place. But something greater happened. His name became known globally. Record labels approached him. His audition video reached hundreds of millions of views. And with his newfound success, the first thing he did was fulfill a promise he whispered to his mother. To give his family a better life and to help others who grew up like he did. Struggling, unseen, unheard. He funded music programs for kids who couldn't afford lessons. He bought instruments for schools. He returned to Manila and stood in the same streets where he once sang for survival, but this time, crowds gathered for him. They cheered his name. They celebrated him. He wasn't invisible anymore, and every time he performed Elvis music, he touched the world all over again. The world knew Elvis as a legend. But Adrian reminded everyone that legends live on through the hearts they inspire. His voice, the same voice that once echoed through the narrow streets of Manila, now echoed across nations. And it all began with one golden moment. One dropped jaw. One dream. One boy who refused to give up.